Hey, Matt.
Yes, Ryan.
This time around, the revolution will not be televised.
No, it will not be.
You want to know why?
Why?
Because they will have to unlock the video feed on our Patreon to get that, revolution that we're about to lay down on the podcast sphere here.
It's true, but for those who are, dealing with some tough times right now, they can't afford the live feed. They can just simply listen to this.
I love it, man. I love it. So, hey, welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi. I am Ryan Kearns.
And I am Matt Durzik.
And if this is your first time listening in to this podcast, first of all, welcome. Second of all, what we do here is every week, me and Matt essentially just take turns picking an album that we're going to dissect A to Z. We go track by track by track. We give a rating. We give a top three. We say, hey, if you like this is what you should check out next based on our history. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's basically about it. So for the last episode that we had Matt's girlfriend on. We discussed Toby Keith. So we tend to we really dive into like a wide range of genres, man.
We try to, and this week is no exception because we are once again pivoting from the world of modern country music to the world of 1980s hip hop. Specifically, the 1988 album "It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back" by Public Enemy. Now, this album is considered to be one of the most influential hip-hop albums of all time. I believe Rolling Stone put it like number 15 on their top 500 albums of all time list back in 2020.
I can imagine that, yeah.
And I think it in their initial list back in 2003 it was at 42, 48, something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this album is considered one of the best hip-hop albums ever. Now, that being said, hip-hop has taken some major shifts over the course of the last almost 40 years, because it will be 40 years since 1988 in 4 years. Sorry.
I'm so old!
But aside from that sad fact of life, the shifting tides of hip-hop, even this album did a lot of that, going from the sort of basic stuff that was started with the likes of Sugar Hill Gang and Curtis Blow, that was kind of more or less perfected by the likes of Run DMC, to something that was a bit more activist leaning, a lot faster, a lot harder. And today we're going to look at whether this album holds a test of time or not, or just our general opinions of it.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about like our little show here. Like, I remember when we did Exile in Guyville, and we both said, hey, this is a highly touted album, very highly critically acclaimed. And we both kind of, like, I know I give mixed opinions. You were a little bit higher on it. But
just a smidge.
Yeah, you weren't like, this is a 10 out of 10, post it on my refrigerator, tell mom about it.
No.
However, a couple albums later, we did Blue by Joni Mitchell. And we were like, yeah, 10 out of 10. Post it on the fridge, tell mom about it.
Yes. So a lot of this is going to be, again, just based on our own thoughts and feelings. And it may be your thoughts and feelings too, it may not be. At the end of this episode, if you feel you agree with us or disagree with us, let us know in the comments section or email us, but we'll discuss all that later.
Yeah, and before we get into the album, just a quick rundown on my experience with diving into rap and hip-hop and where I'm at today, because I think that's going to be, very critical on the lens I'm going to view this album through, because let's face it, like, the reason why I chose 1988 at the end of our last episode is I really have not listened to, like, much old-school rap. Like, my rap is like 2000s and like beyond. So,
right.
Just quick rundown. Well, essentially what I listen to nowadays It's Kendrick Lamar, JPEG Mafia, Danny Brown, like more of that experimental, like kind of like Death Gripsian kind of hip hop.
Yeah.
So like as opposed to what would be like in the mainstream. Like I know an album that got released recently, which was Future and Metro Booming. Their collab album got a lot of like praise, but like I remember listening to it, and I'm like, this basically all sounds like the same kind of like, it just becomes white noise for me after a while. Now I know like I might be too white for that album, but that's how I viewed the album, and what like some modern day rap is. So I can't really get into a Drake. I tried J. Cole once or twice, but yeah, that's where I stand.
Yeah, my hip hop tales, I kind of start listening to hip hop around the time when I became a teenager, sort of the last days of MTV as a source for music. Stuff like top tier Outcast from Speaker Box to Love Below, all the singles from that. Jay-Z's The Black Album, which I think was the first rap album I ever bought, or at least had paid for me at Walmart when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then later on, I started getting into stuff like Eminem, and I mean, because that was the time when hip hop really was becoming more of a mainstream source. Like in the 80s and 90s, like there were bits and pieces of it, but it wasn't what it was. Like it wasn't like so embedded like it was around 2003, 2004. Mm-hmm. Stuff like Usher, Outkast, Lil Jon, the early days of Crunk. Like that's when it seemed like it wasn't just a force, it was the force. And it feels like it's pulled back a little bit from that, or like you said, mainstream hip hop has sounded so much different because it's, there's a lot of sounds that come from modern hip hop, but they don't sound like this. So it's an interesting conversation to have as far as how hip hop went from what it was in the 80s and 90s to what it is today, and that conversation may pop up some points today during this episode, but I say we just get right into the album itself proper. And it starts with an interesting opener called Countdown to Armageddon, which really isn't anything more than a intro piece, a hype track. It was recorded live from the Hammersmith Odeon in London as part of a BBC special, which sounds incredible because that's just two things that don't seem to go together, BBC and Public Enemy. But
yeah,
it was the 80s and money's money, so why not? And basically, this is a track where Professor Griff, on his final album, as it would turn out with the band, basically is the hype man introing the show, or in this case, the album, saying things like, the revolution will not be televised. London, England, you have been warned. And I think it does a good job of hyping the album up because, as we'll get to later on in the album, there are pieces of live footage from those concerts interwoven into the tracks. So I think this is a good way to introduce, okay, this is how we're starting things off, this is how we're getting into this, and it also happens to sound really good too because as it fades out, you just start hear, Griff saying, let's make some noise, starting to really hype things up. So I think it's a solid opener.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, in terms of, the way to, really introduce, if this is your first experience, listening to Public Enemy, let's face it, myself, this is an excellent way to get you hyped up, between the sirens and, the speaker being the revolution will not be televised. It really gives you, this, either impending sense of dread and doom, but you want to, get ready to go fight in the streets, which, I mean, that's probably what Public Enemy's all about back in the 80s, back in the day. And I apologize if you've already covered this, but apparently that venue They hosted Public Enemy and some other Def Jam artists back in 1987. And after that show, due to disturbances before and after that show, it stopped hosting hip-hop acts for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's kind of, I don't know. You never really hear, well, I guess, like, you might hear about, like, how bands like Rage Against the Machine, when they were touring, like, how they, like, you know, their audiences disrupted shows. But nowadays, it's pretty much, I don't want to say tame, but it's definitely not as intense. Especially with hip hop nowadays. But yeah, like you said, you covered it perfectly, man. This is the perfect way to kick off the album. The speakers, the sirens get the listener, like, you know, just so hyped for the album.
Exactly. And that pretty much leads into the next track, which is Bring the Noise, which I vaguely remember, again, this being touted as sort of the best track on the album by Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
I think it was number like 180 on Greatest Songs of All Time back in 2003. I don't know where it is now. And while it is not my favorite track on the album or what I think is the best, I will say this is the most important track on the album because it really sets the blueprint for a lot of recurring themes throughout the album, especially lyrically. Like the first verse, just the first two lines: bass, how low can you go? Death row, what a brother knows. Those are words you're going to be hearing a bit throughout this album, and again, it sort of fuels into this sort of world building in a sense that Public Enemy is doing. As far as the chorus itself, where it goes, bring the noise, I think it's good. I wouldn't say it's like mind-blowing or insane, but I think it's good.
Yeah. I love this song.
No, do you?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, are you aware of the Amazon Prime show called The Boys?
I don't.
Okay, so there's a character in there named Homelander. And to perfectly sum out my thoughts and opinions about this track, and I'll go into several examples of why I think this is true. Like, there's a meme that he has where, like, this is perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details. Like, everything is just so perfect about this. So, actually, fun fact, this wasn't my first experience, like, experiencing, like, this track here. Back in my Tony Hawk Pro Skater days, the remix with Anthrax was in here. I like, whenever, like, I hit play on this, I'm like, wait, I know this song. And then I took a look into it, I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, that's why I know it. But, yeah, so, Chuck D's flow is so good, dude. Like, when he is on point, I would say there's probably no rapper alive or ever that can probably touch him. Like, the way that he has such a pronounced vocal presence and such a focus and a direction, when he's on, get out of the way. And there's going to be several examples, like, throughout this whole album where I'm going to point out, like, different lines and different verses that he does.
Yeah.
Where either A, like, the lyric writing is just a lot of fun, or B, like, there's actually, like, some good messaging behind here. So, like, the first example that I'm going to throw out there, and I apologize now for maybe mispronouncing this name because, you know, I could be completely off base here. But the line reads, "'Cause a brother like me said, well, Farrakhan's a prophet, and I think you ought to listen to what he can say to you. What you ought to do is follow for now." So, like, in that line there, Chuck is advocating for the controversial Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Farrakhan.
Farrakhan? Okay.
Yeah, it's Farrakhan.
Farrakhan. My apologies. Anyways, Farrakhan, the head of the Nation of Islam. Farrakhan, while popular among blacks, has met criticism in some quarters for perceived anti-Semitism. So, like, you know, that kind of gives way to, like, you know, some of the messaging that Chuck D was giving around the time.
Yeah, and funny enough, the anti-Semitism that a lot of people accused Farrakhan for would actually be the same anti-Semitism that would actually force Public Enemy to fire Professor Griff after this album.
Really?
So, yeah. So, we'll get that one out of the way. But I fully agree with you. I think Chuck D's flow on here is fantastic. Personally, I would say that the second verse following the first chorus, where he's going never badder than bad because the brother is madder than mad at the fact that that's corrupt as a senator, so on a roll, but you treat it like soap on a rope because the beats and the lines are so dope. That going over the pure beat of Funky Drummer that was sampled by Terminator X in the song, to me that is like hip-hop at its core. Like, if you want to teach someone what hip-hop is, that's it right there. And there are a few moments on this album that are like that, where I feel like that shit, you just listen to it, it's like, that is hip-hop, especially Public Enemy's hip-hop at its core. I do think this is one of the best tracks on the album. It's not my personal favorite, and we'll get to my favorite later, but I can understand why everyone thinks that this is an important track, because it's, again, establishes a lot of themes, particularly Chuck D's flow. Flavor Flav sounds good on this too, being sort of the response to the call that Chuck D is making in that sense. Terminator X does a very good job of providing the beat. It is a very, 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 very good track.
Absolutely, man. One other note that I'm going to bring to the table to wrap up, bring the noise, and then we can move on to Don't Believe the Hype. Towards the end of the track here, Chuck D becomes a little bit more inclusive with lines like "beat is for Sonny Bono, beat is for Yoko Ono," and lines of from coast to coast, so you stop being like a comatose. Stand, my man, the beat's the same with a boast toast. First of all, that second set where he's doing from coast to coast, so you stop being like a comatose, stand, my man, the beat's the same with a boast toast. That is just so freaking good. My mind's breaking just reading that. Right. I gotta slow down because, I am simply not a rapper by any means. And so with the beat is for Sonny Bono, he's actually including other musical artists into the discussion, saying hey, the beats, music is for everyone. So this is just not exclusive to those who just enjoy rap. Everyone still has a chance to just get down with this. And then the whole from coast to coast, so you stop being like a comatose, and the beat's the same. Again, it brings that inclusive elements. And the 1-2 punch of how Countdown to Armageddon, then you bring the noise. You cannot ask for a better introduction and first track to Public Enemy.
No, absolutely not. And amazingly enough, this isn't Public Enemy's first album. It's their second album. Their first being 1987's Yo Bum Rush the Show. And while that got acclaimed too, the beats and the flows from Chuck D on there are a little slower.
Yeah.
So for them to come out of the gate with this, it's just they went there. They upped their game big time on this. And even my favorite track from Bum Rush the Show, which is My Uzi Weighs a Ton, as much as I like it, that's more or less of a sampling thing I like. The flows and lyrics are kind of they're good, but they're not amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah. So you ready to move on to Don't Believe the Hype?
Let's move on to Don't Believe the Hype. I'll have you take this one.
Okay. So when we get to Don't Believe the Hype, this is where my heart breaks.
Really?
Yeah. And so we go from the highs of highs and everything like that, to this song begins with Flav just with a funky intro being don't believe the hype, I like that. But there's one detail in this track that completely ruins any potential that it has. And do you know what it is?
What's that?
The high-pitched horn in the background. I could not get over it.
I can understand where you're coming from. I completely disagree, but I can understand.
Yeah.
Because it is unnerving. And I don't know. I've listened to this song so many times that I don't think it ever irritated me.
Yeah.
But it's just there now. Like, I don't even focus on it anymore.
It's hard for me to ignore it, man. Like, especially when I know, like, hey, specifically with this song here, I know I associate this song with that high-pitched noise. So, like with the Bruce Springsteen episode, I'm not going to focus on that because, like, there's a lot more to this track than that high-pitched noise because that would be, I don't know, completely narrow-minded and short-sighted. Be like, nope, hey, not going to talk about anything else.
Right.
So that being said, talking about, like, notable lines here, the first one I have here is, number one, not born to run, about the gun, I was licensed to have one, the minute they see me, fear me, I'm the epitome of Public Enemy. So this is Chuck more, he's preaching out about how authority fears him when he is seen because they think he literally has a gun with him at all times. But the gun that, Chuck uses is his words.
Yeah.
And then one other line, then I'll let you jump in here, is all the critics you can hang 'em, I'll hold the rope, but they hope to the Pope and pray it ain't dope. I like that line, like, the concept, like, alliteration there. Yeah, I'll let you chime in here.
Yeah, I kind of understand where you're coming from with the horns, but I don't think they. I think they kind of add to the intensity of the track. I'm not saying they're like the best thing ever, but I don't mind them. Yeah. Otherwise, I think this is a solid follow up to Bring the Noise. I think the interplay between Chuck D and Flavor Flav, particularly at the end of the verses, is pretty good. I think it's a straightforward track, and I think it's more of a smart thing to have this track there because, like I said before, there are a lot of recurring themes. So for a track to have no recurring themes is nice to have, because it proves that they can sort of, branch out and, talk about other things-ish. I mean, there's still plenty of themes that overlap between the two, but the verses seem different. They seem fresher. They seem newer. And while I do agree that the horn is there to agitate, to me, the beat with the guitar is so good. Like, if this was just an instrumental, like, it would be a solid track on its own. Yeah. On top of it, it's a solid, straightforward track with a great beat. Is it, like, mind-blowingly good? No, but it was one of, I think, 5 singles released from this album, and I can get why. It's good.
Yeah. While you were talking, like, the comparison that I was making in my head, like, one thing I had noted here, at least lyrically and, like, flow-wise, like, it doesn't go as hard in the paint as the previous song, which, let's face it, you can't go 100 miles per hour every single track, because if you're going to do that, you're going to be AC/DC, and, like, you're going to paint yourself into a corner, right?
Exactly.
So, but no, like, this song essentially has Chuck, like, addressing his haters and, like, authority. Another set of lyrics that I have here that I'm going to highlight are, coming from the school of hard knocks, some penetrate, they drink Clorox, attack the black because I know they lack exact the cold facts and still try to Xerox. So this is Chuck just addressing his haters. Yeah, so, like, writing wise and flow wise, like, it's good. I respect the disagreement that we have with the horns. I mean, there's plenty of, like, like, when we were talking in the FX episode, one of my favorite songs was Kick, and you're like, I actually don't like this at all because of the atonal aspect. So, like, we all come from different backgrounds. Right,
so. And we all have our own tastes and styles and whatnot.
Yeah, so, you have anything else to add with Don't Believe the Hype?
Not really. Again, I just think it's a fun track. It's a solid, straightforward track. It's not Bring the Noise, but what else really can be?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple tracks later on that can bring the noise.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
So, that being said, let's go on to Cold Lampin' with Flavor.
Cold Lampin' with Flavor. Now, this track is another pivot in the album because this is more or less a Flavor Flav solo track. Not in the sense that it's actually just him producing everything, but it is just his vocal. Chuck D is not on this. And this is just a goofy, fun, silly track. I think the beat from Terminator X and the production crew is very good. And I think trying to take this song seriously compared to Bring the Noise or even Don't Believe the Hype is a mistake. I mean, Flavor Flav is essentially the hype guy, the response guy in Public Enemy. Like, he's not the guy.
Yeah.
So for him to be sort of the lighthearted sort of counterpart to Chuck D's very serious, militant, pro-black activist mentality does present a nice yin and yang to the group. And just some of the lines in this particular song, my favorite being, "You eating death, you like getting dirt from the graveyard, you put gravy on it." Like, if you're taking that seriously, you're doing something wrong.
You know what's absolutely amazing, man?
What?
Like, a lot of the lines that you're personally highlighting, I've already highlighted here, too.
I'm sure you did, because you probably heard that the first time. I was like, wait, what did he say?
But yeah, apparently, like, in the Beatles, like, how, like, Ringo Starr always gets a track. Like, apparently Flav always gets a solo track. And, like, this is just a fun track, man. Like, I wrote down the intro is very much Flavor Flav. I love the beat here, man. Like, Terminator X does a really good job here. Yeah, I just, the only, again, like, no, I'm going to turn off my brain here for a minute, because, like, I wrote down, like, hey, I wish he stayed on point with the verses, but, I mean, that's not Flav. Like, he's just here for a good time. And, like, when he is on, he's really good. Again, I love, like, it's nice. It's a nice change of pace going from the intensity of the first two tracks, then going to Don't Believe the Hype, which is a change of pace, still featuring Chuck D, to go into this here. It's a nice variety that we've had so far. Agreed.
And, talking about, like, how this is, like, again, what Chuck D did in Bring the Noise was sort of revolutionary. This is more along the lines of old school hip-hop. Like, I was thinking about stuff like you would hear from, like, even Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang, noted as, like, the first rap single of all time.
Yeah.
A lot of those were just sort of silly, like, braggadocious type of bars. This is basically the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And and Flav just adds that little hint of unhingedness that is well appreciated.
Yeah.
Again, when he's talking about how, he's just saying flavor like 9,000 times toward the end of the track.
I love that, man. I love it.
like, and I will say that even though it's not like a chorus, like just sort of that hook where it's just saying yeah we're gonna is pretty nice too.
Yeah.
I wrote off anything at that. It's just a fun silly track. So it's a nice come down, sort of a nice come back down to earth compared to some of the other stuff that this album has. Which, not that it's bad, but it does present a nice sort of other side to Public Enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, ready to move on to Terminator X to the Edge of Panic?
Terminator X, The Edge of Panic, yes, let's go.
All right. So, so we go from a couple tracks that really feature Chuck D and, like, what he can bring to the table. Then we exclusively feature Flav in the track, so we can really see what he can bring to the table. Like, he's interspersed throughout those first couple tracks. And now we get to a Terminator X kind of feature. Not exclusively, like, featured, but this is where he's more prominent in there.
Yes.
So it's nice how, like, the sequencing on the album here is really I could really dig it. So getting into this, the intro to the song with the group hyping up, like, Terminator X is really good. I love the Flash sample.
Do you?
Yeah, it's so good, man. And how, like, it kind of, like, scratches and, like skips a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's, like, amazing. Again, the high pitched squeals.
Not your thing.
Not me.
I feel we're going to be saying that a couple more times throughout this review.
The sad thing is, like, when I initially did my, like, more thorough listen in on this album here, like I didn't catch like the high pitched squeals in this track here. It wasn't until I had my third listen of the album, and I was just like, oh, yeah, I forgot about this. I didn't catch this the first time. So I mean, take that for what you will. Maybe my ears were more sensitive. Maybe it was better speakers that I was listening in on at the time for my third one. But that being said, the floor is yours for right now.
Yeah, again, I think the horns are there to present some sort of intensity, and in another sense, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Because this track is going to sort of be the preview of a track that's upcoming, which was actually the first single off this album, but I'm not going to spoil which one that is yet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think I know the horn is a little unnerving, but again, I'm not bothered by it. In fact, I think the chorus that features the horn while everybody's chanting "Go, go, go," is very much, again, just another point of this is Public Enemy, this is hip hop at its core.
Yeah.
In a much more of a playful sense, because that's what a lot of hip hop acts in the 80s and 90s did, sort of that go, 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 go type of flow. Aside from that, some of the lyrics where they're talking about saying, we don't care about Grammys or what the people like, we're going to do our own thing. I really like that. I think the interplay between Chuck D and Flav, once again, is very good, especially towards the end of the track. In fact, I'm not even sure if this is like Terminator X's best work. I mean, at the start of the track, yes.
Yeah.
But throughout the rest of the track, it's more or less just, him doing his own thing and then letting the guys get their verses in there. I think it's a really solid, good track. I think that the lyrics towards the end, these aren't the best lyrics that Public Enemy has, but they're also not the worst.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a solid, good track. And I do agree, the intro is fantastic, and the little live cuts as they start at the beginning of these tracks are fantastic.
Yeah. One line I'm gonna highlight here. Again, like a whole lot of not meaning that you can get behind the lyrics here. This is more of like just for the more vibe and the more like elements that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the lyric I'm going to highlight is probably towards the end here. It's, I know you're clocking the enemy, you should be clocking the time, checking records, I'm wrecking, you're for defecting my rhyme, no provoking, no joking, the stage is set. Like, I like the alliteration there. Whenever he gets into that little rhyme thing, it's pure musical bliss in my ears. So,
oh, yeah.
So overall, like, again, with Don't Believe the Hype, if it wasn't for the high-pitched samples, I would really love this song due to the chemistry that the group shows on here. Like,
gotcha.
It's a nice blend of what each person can bring to the table.
Right. So, no, I understand that, and I think it's a very, again, I think it's a really good, solid track.
Man. So, ready to go on to Mind Terrorists?
Mind Terrorists. This is the first of 3 interlude tracks on the album, not including Countdown Armageddon. And it's really nothing to really dive into. I think the beat is solid. I think the contrast between the, guitar effect or synth effect, that wow, 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 and the beat underneath it, mixed with little samples of Flav going bass for your face, get that. It's a nice interlude. I can't really say too much else about it than that. It sounds like an interlude, period, end of story.
Yeah, you basically hit the nail on the head there, man. Overall, it's a great DJ feature / interlude. The mixing of Flav and just what Terminator X can do with a track like this, it really does transition us into the next phase of the album, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So, without further ado, let's just jump into Louder Than a Bomb.
Louder Than a Bomb.
So, I'm going to let you take this one, because, let's face it, Mind Terrorists, it was basically...
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It exists. It's cool. We like it. Louder Than a Bomb is a little bit different because... while some of the beats are a bit more, and not to say the beats on this one don't go hard too, but it feels like a lot of the sounds underneath the beat, particularly the intro, sound like something out of, like you can hear Flav amongst the masses at Woodstock.
Yeah.
Where the backgrounds go woo, and Flavor just sort of talking.
Yeah.
And then the beat itself is sort of heavy with like 70s funk guitars, so the tone is a little bit more old school on this track, but it doesn't make it any less relentless. The way that Chuck D's talking about how, the government's tapping his phones and that, again, they're scared of him because they feel like he's, this menace to society.
Yeah.
And that his words are louder than a bomb, and that his voice is more powerful than any military weapons.
Yeah.
And that chorus where it's just going louder, louder. It's so good. It's so good because you wish it did get louder.
Yeah.
You wish it did get more chaotic.
Yeah.
Again, I think everyone does their best here, especially Chuck D and Terminator X. Floor is yours.
Yeah, like, this is my second favorite track off the album.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I can respect that.
And, like, one thing that I didn't even note here, but, like, one thing I do want to highlight is I really love how at the end of every verse where Chuck ends it with the "'cause I'm louder than a bomb," but he whispers it. Like, that's such a nice touch, man.
Yeah, it's intimidation.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And, like, overall, Chuck sounds as tight as Bring the Noise, or even tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's absolutely amazing. Like, the transition from the more, like, open, airy kind of vibe to, like, just flipping the switch to get back into the hard nature of the album is really nice. A lot of great lines here that I can highlight, which I'm just going to blow, try to blitz on through because we have 18 tracks to cover. So first line here is, "'Cause I give you what you lack, come right and exact. Our status is the saddest, so I care where you at, black." So essentially here, Chuck is here to give the history of the black community that the government give the black community the history that the government's tried to erase from them. So and that pays off in a later track much further down the road. But then the other, there's only one other line I want to highlight here, and it's really expertly written. "You're CIA, you see I ain't kidding." Like,
that's great.
I love that, man. That makes me so happy. But, like, overall, like, I love this song. Chuck is killing it with the raps. Flav and Terminator X do a great job building around that, and the beat is sick. Like, I think if it wasn't for the perfection of Bring the Noise and my mental association with my Tony Hawk days back in my younger years, like, this could easily be a number one for me. So yeah.
No, it is a great track, and again, there's the flow, like you say, is fantastic. Not as much flavor on this one, which it's fine. Terminator X does a fantastic job with the sampling on here. Just the right touches of irony, and it's very smart. It's a very smart track. So we can go ahead and move on to Caught. Can I Get a Witness? I'll let you take this.
So, with this track here, we get into probably one of the more thematical intros to a track here, where you can really feel like, hey, like, they're actually, like, in a courtroom. And I really appreciate that opening segment, and the outside of that, even the live segment that they include, like, overall, like, I'm gonna take a step back. Like, I love how they intersperse, like, live segments to introduce like a lot of their tracks. Like, it's a very nice touch. I will say, though, like, overall, like, I appreciate the thematical elements. Going from Louder Than a Bomb to this was not as nice of a transition as, like, from Bring the Noise to Don't Believe the Hype.
Right.
In terms of, like, how hard, like, Chuck can go in the paint with, like, the lyric writing. Again, is it a bad track? Is there any high-pitched squeals? No. Nothing's bad. Nothing is here that can really, turn me away from the track. Just, I think at this point, we're about 8 tracks in, and this is where my critical brain starts to go into, I don't want to say overdrive, but like, okay, how am I going to compare this to what I've previously heard?
Right.
And overall, outside of the verses and the performance, the beat is fantastic. The other thing that I'll notice, that I noticed here, and then I'll flip it over to you, good sir, is that in the second verse, Chuck is just slightly offbeat, and he kind of seems to be struggling just a little bit. It could have been just a weird performance, and they said, hey, fine, whatever, we'll do it live. But yeah, that's basically like how I feel about the song as a whole.
I pretty much agree with you on all fronts, and I will go ahead as far as saying this is probably my least favorite track on the album.
Oh, thank God. I felt so bad.
Well, no, because I agree with you. The beat is very good. The intro is very good. And like you said with Bring the Noise, but not so much here, when Chuck D is on, he is on. The problem is it feels like this whole track is off. And I don't think... It feels a little too... it feels too much like a spoken interlude over top of a beat, more so than an actual rap song.
Yeah.
And I don't know. To me, it just feels like again. I don't think it's a bad track. It's good within the album. When I seek it out individually, probably not, because I think that the theme is very interesting.
Oh, my letter.
Yeah, right.
I tried to like censor that sneeze. Like I almost blew off my nose.
We'll edit that out later. Edit that out. So the thing with, again, the track, it just feels, especially towards the end, where it just seems like they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Chuck D's saying, like, Flavor Flav, we think we're going to sell out. Professor Griff, do you think we're going to sell out? Like, it's not bad, but compared to the standards that they had set for themselves, it's pretty weak.
I wonder if this would be a better live track, to be honest with you, dude. Like, it could be, it might have a potential, and especially considering that we both kind of noted that Chuck doesn't seem to be on point here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's probably, outside of the random squeals in the album, like, this is probably, like, my least favorite track. But I mean, that being said, like, you know, Terminator X does do a great job with the scratches on here. Like, he basically carries the track on his back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No question.
So speaking about Terminator X, you ready to go on to show 'em what you got?
Yeah, show them what you got.
Okay.
So this is the second of 3 interludes on this album. And it's a very interesting one for a couple reasons, and reasons similar to another interlude, the third and final we'll talk about in a little bit. But this track is known for basically spawning 2 other songs that would become in the future, particularly Rump Shaker by Rex and Effect, because it would sample the saxophone riff from this track. Mm-hmm. And then also Jay-Z's Show Me What You Got was sort of an interpolation of this when he recorded, I think it was Kingdom Come back in 2006, 2007, whatever year that came out. But aside from that, I like the sax on this. I think the vocal rhythms are a little choppy, but that's not like a complete like destroying point. I think it's okay.
I love this track, man.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Sucker for the sax?
Yeah, sucker. Like, that speaks to, you know, me as a current sax player. But, like, you know, I love the way that he blends in the sax with just the overall, like, you know, how it just loops and how Public Enemy is just mixed in there. And this song is basically meant to salute black heroes of the past. A lot of notable names are mentioned here. Overall, this is probably like my favorite DJ feature off of here,
okay.
Which is not really saying much because we only get like the 3
of them.
And like full disclosure, the one that's coming up in a little bit is like my least favorite, but like it's basically kind of a nothing burger in my opinion.
That's fair.
But yeah, that being said, I feel like we've showed them what we got here.
Yeah,
What
and
is
and that will admit that is a sexy sax riff.
Oh yeah. So let's move on to She Watch Channel Zero.
She watched Channel Zero.
So again, since you took the DJ interlude, I'll let you jump in with She Watched Channel Zero.
Okay. So this is another pivot in the sense of sound, because we go from, and again, it feels like there are a lot of pivots, because we go from the 70-ish sounding Louder Than a Bomb to the, kind of also 70-ish sounding, but in a more funky, lighter way, Caught Can I Get a Witness, to the very of its time sort of silhouette behind the Shutters sound of Show 'Em What You Got, to this, which samples, of all bands, Slayer.
Oh yeah, you're gonna love it, boy. Yeah, boy.
It samples Angel of Death, and it's very rock driven. And for the record, this album was produced by Rick Rubin, so not necessarily a stretch for him.
Oh yeah,
as he is very much into mixing the hip hop with the rock and roll, and this is no exception. Again, a great beat by Terminator X. The flow by Chuck D is very good. The lyrics very much describe just sort of this brainwashed woman who's sitting there just flipping through channels, trying to find something, trying to find some semblance of reality, where the guy's just like, yeah, no, you're not going to find it there. It's basically a critique of television, particularly soap operas, TV ads. I think it's safe to say probably white television in a sense. And I like the track overall. It's probably one of my more... I wouldn't say this is my favorite track, but it's sort of like the warm bowl of soup, where it's just like, yes.
And especially going from a lot of purely hip hop, funk based stuff, to something that's is essentially like you said, it features that Slayer sample and how that's mixed in. That is a complete change of pace. And at this point, we're into the latter half of the album. So if you're listening to this from A to Z, you get, there's enough in this album here where there's enough change ups that it really does hold your attention, as opposed to how I felt with Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'll let you finish your thought there, because I rudely interrupted you. I apologize.
That's okay. The lyrically, I think again it's solid. I really like the reference that Flav makes in the. I don't even know what you would call it. I guess the ad lib that follows the second verse, in a sense, or the second chorus, where he's talking about, we're getting ready to watch the Super Bowl and we got a black quarterback, so step back. That is such a historical marker, because this was released in 1988. I want to say it might have been the same year or maybe a year prior, but the Washington football team, as they are called, formerly called the Redskins, they were in the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos, and they were starting their quarterback, Doug Williams, who was the first black quarterback to start in a Super Bowl. And a lot of people were actually saying at the time, can a black quarterback, lead a team to a Super Bowl victory? Threw for 4 touchdowns, 1 MVP. In a, I think, 42-10 beatdown of the Broncos.
Yeah, boy!
So, it can be done. It was done. It's a historical mark for the NFL, and it's a historical marker on this album. I love that reference. But aside from that, it's just a really good track.
This is my third favorite track off the album.
Third favorite? Okay.
Yeah. Here, Chuck D sounds more fresh and on point here, as compared to what we had with Caught Can We Get a Witness. So that was nice seeing him get back into it. I love how... a little musical moment towards the end of the verses where he's talking about talking about Channel Zero. The sound cuts out and you just hear Chuck rapping that part. That's a nice little touch there.
It is.
And the chorus where it repeats, she watch, you watch, you watch. I love that, man. That is, it works so well. And yeah, one line that I'm going to highlight here is Her brain's been trained by a 24-inch remote. Revolution's a solution for all of her children, but her children don't mean as much as the show. I mean, watch her worship that screen and fiend for a TV ad. It just makes me mad. Like, that perfectly sums up, like, the messaging of this song here. Like, and like even like nowadays, like this song could be relevant to like a couple different aspects to like modern American life. So overall, I love the song is really good. I really enjoy how the verses are structured, the message, the chemistry that the group shows here. Like overall, this is a perfect example of like what they can really bring to the table. I mean, like, Bring the Noise is gonna be perfection, no matter how much you're gonna shake a tree at it.
Yeah.
But this is such a good song.
It really, really is. With that, I think we can move on to Night of the Living Bassheads.
Okay. So, and I do believe this will be me kicking this off here.
Yes.
So, earlier on, I was talking about like how Chuck D was giving history back to the black community that the government tried to erase from them.
Yeah.
This song is the anti-crack song. So this is the platform that Chuck D uses to basically highlight what the drug this drug has taken away from the black community. Lyrics that exemplify this are selling, smelling, sniffing, and riffing, and brothers try to get swift and sell their own, rob a home, while some shrivel to bone, like comatose walking around. So that really does set the scene for how crack has robbed the black community. Gotta say this again. That horn, man. Yeah.
I will say, out of all the horns on this album that do intrude, this might be my least-ish favorite.
Yeah.
And not to say that it's bad. I don't mind it at all. In fact, I think a lot of it does sound like it's sort of creating the intensity that it's supposed to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does sound like a car alarm.
And I get what he was going for with that. Because you're talking about, like, how crack has robbed the black community. And, like, how, like, that's supposed to be, like, I don't know, it might be trying to be, like, a police siren or something like that. But I can't get behind it, man. And that's, if it wasn't for that, this song would probably be instantly my favorite off the album.
Really?
Like, because the messaging here is, like, really good. Like, the interlude between the verses are really, like, amazing between the scratching and the samples used. And just the overall, like, construction of the verses, like, they're really nice. It's just that horn, man. It breaks my heart because, like, if you get rid of all the horns here, like, this is a 10 out of 10. Thank you, put it on the fridge, show mom later.
Yeah. So my perspective of this song is a little different. First of all, again, I'm not as bothered by the horns.
Yeah.
Secondly, I did not realize or did not emulsify into my brain that this was an anti-crack song.
Okay.
Because to me, this song just is more about Chuck D's flow, and in my personal opinion, an absolute masterclass of a beat by Terminator X.
Yeah.
Because the chorus du jour is, it references bass, it samples Chuck D saying bass from Bring the Noise, which again is sort of the first of several tracks that sort of become self-referential towards the end of this album, and not in a bad way. That little interlude of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kick it. I love that. It just flows so well. And I think the lyrics, like you say, are really good too. Just describing again the ways that crack is destroying the black community. And reading them now, you're dead on with how the way the things that people are doing, and the way he closes out that first verse of saying, please don't confuse this with the sound I'm talking about bass. That's basically saying, listen, just because we're a hip-hop group and we are a part of the black community doesn't mean we support this. Don't confuse what we're doing with what they're doing. We ain't about that. We're trying to talk against that. I love that. This is not one of my favorite tracks on the album, but I think it's a very good track. And again, I'm not so bothered by the horns as you are.
Yeah. Maybe one day I'll get over it. Maybe if I got a little bit more exposed to 1980s hip hop, maybe I'll get more accustomed to it. But at this current day and age, no, I can't.
Right.
But overall, horns outside, I really like I said earlier, I love the lyrics, the message, and even the DJ interlude that you and I've talked about, it's really good. It's just, the horns kill me. Luckily, I feel like this is the last time I'm going to mention horns throughout this whole album, which, we're in the last little,
We got a few more tracks to go, and I think there might be one more that you might...
We'll have to see. Because I don't think I actually have any notes on that. So
really? Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to see. All right, so moving on to Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos.
I know it's technically my turn, but I'm going to let you kick this off.
Okay, so this is a really another thematical and very this is telling a story here. Take what they were trying to do with Caught, Can We Get a Witness? Mm-hmm. And really just driving that story element. And this is what you get here. Chuck sounds incredibly focused in the opening verse that details him getting a draft letter in the mail, only for him to reject that due to the fact of how black people are treated by the country. And then he finds himself in jail. Mm-hmm. I love that piano, the chilling chords. It adds such a nice effect. And another thing that I'm going to note here is how Flav's distorted vocals in between verses, basically guiding Chuck through the breakout, are such a nice track, nice touch there. Overall, I love this song. It tells a great story, great beat, great flows. Just everything is so tight. No notes. It's not one of my favorites though. It would be up there. Maybe it could take over the third spot, but I just didn't put it down as one of my favorites.
So this is my favorite track on the album.
Nice.
Because you hit on it, that sample with the I think it's I know for a fact it's Isaac Hayes. From his Hot Buttered Soul album, that piano. It is, and that mixed with the drums, it is a perfect beat. And like you said, Chuck D is focused. He tells a story, and not only is he focused on the entire track, but definitely towards the end of the third verse, when he's talking about, I had 6 COs, now it's 5 to go, and I'm serious, call me delirious, but I'm still a captive. I gotta wrap this. Time to break as time grows intense. I got a steel in my right hand, now I'm looking for the fence. The intensity in which he grows his delivery over the course of that track, especially towards the end, is fantastic. I agree with you that the interludes with Flavor Flav on the speakers, he's just sort of on the mic saying, you got this, man, you got this. To me, this track is bona fide perfect. I also love the beginning because not only does it perfectly transition out from the last track with a live bit where Flav goes, bass for your face, London, everybody makes some noise. That's perfect. Yeah. The intro featuring, I think it's a TV clip talking about Johnny Cash's performance. It was either Folsom or San Quentin, whichever album it was, but... that adds in well. The Stevie Wonder sample right before the track gets started, featuring a word I will not use because we like money, also plays very well. This track to me is perfect, and I agree it's not as important as Bring the Noise or doesn't establish themes. Not to mention, of course, this track doesn't exist without Bring the Noise because the samples at the end of Now They Got Me a Selling, Death Row, What a Brother Know, right from Bring the Noise.
Yeah.
But to me, that beat is so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is my favorite track on the album. I won't go as far as saying it's the best, but it is my favorite pro bono.
Not 10 out of 10, like,
No notes.
Yeah, no notes. Put it on the fridge, show mom later. So yeah, overall great song. So now we get into the last little leg of the album with the third DJ feature, Security of the First World. So I will take this DJ feature.
Okay.
It really doesn't do anything for me.
It doesn't do it for me either. Why doesn't it do it for you?
It's just empty calories. Like, it doesn't offend me or anything like that. Like, it just, there's nothing notable about it. It's
right.
just, I feel like it's a good transition point from Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos to Rebel Without a Pause. Mm-hmm. Because we go from a very serious track back into, like, you know, the more, like, you know, like, focused and angry, like, you know, like,
yeah.
What the rest of the album was mainly, like, you know, what the rest of the album is mainly known for.
Right.
So, I mean, it does its job well, but in terms of, like, notable stuff, I can't remember anything of it.
So this is where I might blow your mind a little bit. So I agree with you. In and of itself, it's not spectacular. It's really just a beat with a few, like, digits on top, like sort of like a pressing of a keypad, which is kind of neat, but not necessarily anything to write home about.
Yeah.
This track probably would be the most nothing burger, if not for time and circumstance. Like, if we were reviewing this in 1989, that's what I would say about it. But the fun fact about this song is that it was sampled for one of the biggest hits of 1990. Do you know which song that is?
No.
It is a song by Madonna called Justify My Love. It is the same beat.
You're going to judge me.
You don't know that song?
I don't know that song.
Okay, then, never mind. Mind not blown.
Mine is still in cranium.
Well, that's good, at least. Actually, believe it or not, it was actually co-produced, that song, by Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah.
Justify My Love was, which basically means he took this beat and helped Madonna, I guess, write some of the lyrics. I don't know. But if not for that little nitpick of a fact, this would be a nothing burger. But this being on it, being like, oh, so that's where that comes from. Does have that little bit of nerdy, like, I know words, I know things, to an otherwise relatively forgettable interlude.
Yeah.
I do admit the beat is pretty good, though.
Yeah. I mean, that is a solid fact. Maybe one day we'll discuss Madonna.
Maybe.
And maybe explore that a little bit. But that being said, I'll jump into Rebel Without a Pause. So the intro that has the speech sample from Reverend Jesse Jackson, it works well to introduce the song. Chuck is pretty decent on the opening verse. Mm-hmm. He's on point. It's decent enough. One line that I'm going to highlight here is known and grown. Now known and grown, when they're clocking my zone, it's known, snaking and taking everything that a brother owns. That's a fun line. Mm-hmm. The chorus features DJ scratches that are very good. But I just remembered something here.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you didn't bring it up or put it in your notes.
Yeah. The squealing noise is back.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically all I have for the track here. Like, you know, overall, it's a good track. Squealing noise basically ruins it for me. But outside of that, like, you know, it's interesting. If I could take a step back, so when we did the Bruce Springsteen episode, first of all, if you've not listened to that episode, feel free to pause this pod, go back and listen to that episode, and then resume this episode.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest disagreement we've had.
But, I mean, if I could be completely honest with you, I'd rather listen to Born to Run and Bruce's vocals on there 100 times out of 100 as compared to listening to that squealing noise.
Really?
Like,
wow.
Because I can yes, there's performance issues that I have with Bruce's vocals, and it does tend to sound flat. But the backing band does enough to really carry the load, and Bruce isn't as bad as like just the high pitched squeal that just once you notice it
right. And I think on top of that too, not that I agree with you at all, but the fact that in a sense you can listen to Born to Run and be like, okay, well that's Bruce's voice.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do to change that or modify that to the point where it sounds natural.
Yeah.
Whereas with this was a blatant choice by Terminator X to be like, we're going to throw that in there and we're going to use it. And again, I actually think out of the horns, this is the best one.
Yeah.
And fun fact, this is actually the first single released off of It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, which is kind of fun because this track comes so far at the end of the album that the track Terminator X The Edge of Panic before that sort of was a foreshadowing of what's to come and wouldn't have existed without Rebel Without a Pause. And this would be a trick later used on the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem, where Stan, I think, was the third track on that album, and it references Kim, which I think was like the third to last track on that album. So it's a very interesting trick, and I always like it whenever bands sort of incorporate that. So I was like, we're going to be talking about something, but you don't know what it is yet. And then they talk about it later down the line. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I think the horns themselves do add an intensity. It sounds like almost like a tea kettle ready to pop off, in a sense. I think the sampling is very good. In the second verse where Chuck D's going soul, rock and roll, coming like a rhino, tables turn, suckers is burned to learn. They can't disable the power of my label. Def Jam tells you I am. When it's just him and the beat and the horn, again, that's just another moment on the album where it's like, this is hip-hop, this is Public Enemy at its core.
Yeah.
Particularly with the beat that they use, which is the beat for Funky Drummer by James Brown, which is a great instrumental track if you ever get the chance to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I remember reading once where Terminator X basically said that song was his milk, that's basically sort of his core understanding of sampling, and that he uses it a lot because that just keeps the flow going. And particularly the end of this track where it goes back to live, and they just bring that beat back. Everyone says bring that beat back, bring that beat back. It's such a great interlude because I'm pretty sure this song was recorded before that concert, and that it just sort of just progresses into the future, that this song was something that they were proud of. And I can understand why. It's a really good song.
Yeah. Ready to go on to Prophets of Rage? Because I feel like we hit Rebel Without a Pause.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. We can move on to Prophets of Rage.
Okay, so I'm going to let you kick it off because I took Security of the First World and Rebel Without a Pause.
Yes. So Prophets of Rage is the penultimate track on the album, and kind of keeps up the same flow with Rebel Without a Pause in a sense. Chuck D's flow is very good. Talk about how he's angry and that, the way that this is going, we need to get together, we need to show them that we're angry, that they, he has a right to be hostile, as the opener insists. This track really wasn't a standout for me. Like, I think it's good. I think the sample is very good by Terminator X. I think Flav's interplays is good. This is sort of like a B-side version of Rebel Without a Pause in a sense.
Yeah. I can get behind that. Like, a lot of the thoughts that you have, I'm going to share here. Like, overall, like, Chuck is doing a really good job carrying the song. Not too many standout lines, to be honest with you.
Not really.
I would say for the first time, the beat here isn't as sick compared to the rest of the album. This is kind of like a standard beat, like nothing to write home about. One line that I do have written down is, and on the stage I rage and I'm rolling into the poor. I pour in metaphors. I'm not bluffing, it's something that we ain't did before. Great set of lyrics there. But overall, like, the breakdown in this track is pretty good. But other than that, I mean, the performance, the beats, and everything works well together, it's not a standout track for me.
It really isn't for me. I think it's another track, sort of like Caught Can We Get a Witness, that plays better within the album that does on its own.
Yeah.
Not something I would seek out later on, but I don't have anything bad to say about it. I think it's a good track. I do like the little pieces of okay, let's go, that are in there. That I think that's really cool. Does reference, once again, Bring the Noise with the Power to the People Say line. So again, just sort of creating that world building, that if you hear the song on its own, it's like, where'd that come from? Okay, go back to the beginning. So it's a nice little way to be like, sort of like a little Easter eggs within the album saying, oh, I wonder what they're talking about. So,
man. All right, you ready to finish her off with Party for Your Right to Fight?
Party for Your Right to Fight.
So, this track here is a play off of the Beastie Boys song.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who are like, what's a Beastie Boy? Okay. But too, like, the track that they're referencing is Fight for Your Right to Party. But this is a great way to end the album, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could go with the intensity that, the rest of the albums are brought together, but this is just a fun track, man.
It is.
The soul sample to kick it off is really good. And the first verse actually just features Chuck D and Flav rapping together. And it works so well. Like, it's just them coming together. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think it just mainly features them rapping in unison. And the song really just mainly features samples and Terminator X just scratching. It's a great track, man.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album. I think it's a fantastic closer. I love the guitar sample. I love the duet, in a sense, that Flavor Flav and Chuck D are getting into on the verses.
Yeah.
Apparently, this is a song that's dedicated to the Black Panther Party and how they basically blame J. Edgar Hoover for putting both Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X in prison, basically against the government, saying we got to stand up for our rights because we should be proud to be black, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The only knock I have against this song, it's a very nitpick, is the Bob Marley sample of "Don't Give Up the Fight." Could have been a little smoother, or maybe interpolated, but that's a minor nitpick. I love this track.
Yeah. All right, man. So we did it.
We did it.
We reviewed an 18-track...
16.
16?
It's 16.
It felt like 18. But no, we reviewed a 16-track hip-hop album from the 80s. It's our first hip-hop review that we've done that we weren't, like, just kind of scratching our heads at what Kanye West was talking about.
Well, I figure this is only the second album we've done in the hip-hop realm.
Yeah.
So you're not wrong. Yeah. Technically, you are not wrong. You are correct. The most proper kind of correct.
So, I would say, like, overall, for me to review this album here, it was a different change of pace for me because, like, before we would incorporate, like, vocals and everything like that. But no, like, that's not what this is. So, like, I had to switch my brain into a different kind of mode. So it was a very interesting dissection for me. So I'll go with ratings first, and then I'll kick it over to you.
Cool.
So yeah, before this review, I never really listened to anything that Public Enemy has put out. Like, I did listen, like, the Bring the Noise Anthrax remix. Like, I'm not going to count that as, like, a valid Public Enemy entry because, again, that's just a remix. So,
yeah.
I did enjoy the album. Great deal of songs like Bring the Noise, Louder Than Bomb, and She Watches, Channel Zero are excellent examples of what the group can bring to the table. What brings it out for being perfection, and Matt knows this by the look on his face.
The horns.
The horns. So, that being said, it pains me to say this, I'm going to give this album a 7 out of 10.
A 7 out of 10?
Yeah.
Wow.
To tell you, like, how much I don't like those horns, when I went through the re-listen, whenever I came across tracks like Don't Believe the Hype, it was a skip.
Instant skip.
Yeah,
wow.
I hate to say that. Like, if a track makes me skip it, it's gonna hurt the album rating for me.
I can understand that, and I respect your opinion, even though I don't particularly agree with it. Because to me, this album is the magnum opus of late 80s, early 90s hip hop. Like, this is where the party starts.
Okay.
Like, everything that comes after it, particularly NWA Straight Outta Compton, stuff like Dr. Dre's The Chronic, and even later albums down the line, like Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP, even going all the way down to the Kendrick Lamar stuff. Like, hip hop doesn't have that credibility because of this, it wouldn't have this credibility, I think, because of what this album presented. Like, and I'm not completely discrediting anything that came before it. Like, I think Run DMC was the first, like, real artist to make hip-hop seem viable as, a commercial force. But as a commercial and critical force, I think this album is where the conversation starts and ends. To me, this is a 10 out of 10 by far. Because for all the weaknesses I talk about in here, whether it be the meh of Security in the First World or the sort of haphazardness of Can We Get a Witness, there's enough good on those tracks, and the stronger tracks like Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos, Louder Than a Bomb, Bring the Noise, elevate those mistakes to be part of something that's greater. So yeah, this is a 10 out of 10 for me, no question.
Matt dropped another 10.
My second 10.
Yeah.
And the first album, that's a 10 that you did not agree with it being a 10.
I know. Crazy world, man.
Crazy world. So that averages out to a 8.5, which I can accept that.
Yeah. I did not want to rate the album anything lower than a 7. Like, it kind of did hurt me rating this a 7 because I initially had it at a 9. And then after thinking about the horns, I'm like, no, it's gonna kill me. But
yeah, no, I get that. But to me, again, I think in my personal opinion, the horns particularly add to the intensity of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It just creates this, sort of militant tapestry. Not two words I thought I would ever put together, but a militant tapestry of sound that, again, does a point-perfect job of describing what Public Enemy was, and therefore what hip-hop would become.
Yeah. All right. So, not as big of a struggle for me in terms of coming up with a next album recommendation, because I wanted to keep, what I mean not as big of a struggle, like, I really struggled with the Toby Keith episode.
Right.
Like, I was just like, I actually have to think about this.
What do?
Yeah. But it might not be as, like, as good of a comparison, but in terms of, like, the next album recommendation that I'm going to throw out there to people, if you like this, if you never heard of anything else from Public Enemy and you want to follow my brain, the album that I'm going to recommend is from the Wu-Tang Clan. Enter the Wu-Tang. 36 Chambers. So I remember listening to that for the first time a couple years ago, and I'm like, wait, this is what Wu-Tang brings to the table? Why didn't nobody tell me about this? And then, like, everybody else in the world's like, we told you about this, you just didn't listen.
That is an album that I have sort of, like, had, like, sort of floating in the back of my mind for a while that I really am, like, every time I hear about it, it's like, oh, I should give that a listen. Then for some reason, I never do. Yeah. So hopefully that pushes me further to discover that. For me, this is an easy pick for next recommendation album. It's the next Public Enemy album, which is Fear of a Black Planet, released in 1990. Very much a strong sequel to this album. A lot of the songs are not quite as good in a sense, but it does have some great excuse me, edit that out. Edit! It does have some great songs in there. For me particularly, Brother's Gonna Work It Out. Fight the Powers on there, stuff like Who Stole the Soul and Burn Hollywood Burn. And I think Burn Hollywood Burn is a much better version of Can We Get a Witness. I think that there's two Flavor Flav songs on this album. I think they're both better than Cold Lamp and Flavor. Overall, I don't think the album is as good or as extraordinarily revolutionary as It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. But if you liked this album, that's the next album to go to for sure.
Awesome. I think I will like check out that album because it'll be interesting to hear like what they've done.
Yes,
like the sequel to that.
Not to mention, there's less chaotic chords on there. I will warn you.
Oh my goodness! Then
at least that from what I remember. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, please let me know.
I'll let you know. So that being said, Matthew, are you ready for the next review?
Yes, and this is going to be the first time in, I think, 5 episodes that you've actually chosen the next album we're going to talk about, because the last 4 episodes, it was Jamie teaching us about K-pop, then us reviewing one of the K-pop albums she selected, which was Pink Tape. Then I picked the next 2 albums, which were Bullets in the Gun and this one. So, yeah, this is your first time in a while. What you got for us?
So I'm going to turn the tables on you here.
Oh.
So you know how you, at the end of some episodes, you like to you have me choose between 2 arbitrary factors.
Yeah.
So we're going to travel to one of 2 states here. I'm going to let you choose which one.
Okay.
So we're either going to go to Arizona or Nebraska.
Oh, jeez.
I know. All right.
Arizona or Nebraska.
So what you got?
I'm going to go with Arizona.
All right. Awesome. So our next album that we're going to review is going to be from a band called Jimmy Eat World. And the album we're going to review is Bleed American.
Oh, wow.
So I added that option in as a quick, audible, because I recently did see Jimmy Eat World live, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to, for me to expose that album to you. Because have you heard of it yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, there's one song off there that you definitely heard.
Is it the middle?
It's the middle.
Okay, cool.
So
not blindly going into this album, but that's okay.
Yeah. So that being said, do you have anything else to add about Public Enemy before we finish her out?
Nope, this is a 10 out of 10 album. Go check it out.
Okay. Put it on the fridge, tell Mom about it later.
Damn right.
I love how that's become a little saying for me. So.
It really has.
So, that being said, if you reach this point in the episode and you're still listening to us, first of all, thank you.
Yes.
Second of all, if you like what you heard, which is kind of evident by the fact that you're listening to this part, the best way that you can help support me and Matt here is on that podcasting platform of choice. Follow us, give us the highest rating that you can possibly give us, tell a friend about an episode that you know that they would enjoy, because we've covered a good bit of genres and acts at this point. And if you're listening to us on the YouTubes, like and subscribe, drop an emoji in the comments.
Yes.
And if you're looking to follow us on any other platforms, we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. If you have an episode suggestion, contact me and Matt directly, or you can throw us an email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. And for the last time in this episode, I am Ryan Kearns.
And I'm Matt Derzik.
And remember these words. You have to party for your right to fight.
We're on a mission, y'all.